friends, it's Suskit, and welcome back to another episode of the AE Modular Video Library, the series that takes a look at the wide range of modules available for the AE Modular system. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2-envelope module over here. We'll be giving a general overview of it before playing through some demo patches towards the end. Before we begin, AE Modular is a small and ever-growing system, so if you find this video useful, be sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, or consider supporting me on Patreon. The videos in this series can be found in a playlist on my channel and can be viewed in any order. Green thumbnails are used for official Tangible Waves modules, and pink thumbnails are used to cover third-party modules. With all of that said, let's now take a look at the 2-envelope module. So the 2-envelope module is, like it says on the tin, 2 different envelopes, and you can see that their controls are divided by this squiggly white line down here. In terms of inputs, we have 2 gate inputs, one for each envelope. We also have CV inputs for the attack and decay of each envelope. As well as that, we've got bus gates so that we can use MIDI from something like the System Deluge over here to trigger it. And then in terms of outputs, we have 3 outputs for each envelope, and then there is an end output for each envelope, which means that as soon as the envelope is finished its cycle, it will send out a trigger through the end. Now that's already a lot to take in, and we will be demoing how to use some of those inputs, but let's go over some of the controls down here first. We've got an attack knob for the attack, a decay knob for the decay. We've got 2 switches over here as well as a button. The first switch, you will notice, has a diagram above and below it. So this actually allows you to switch between triggered mode or gate mode. More on that later. We've also got a fast and a slow mode. So if I were to turn this up and press the button, which of course activates our envelope, you can see that it's relatively short. If we were to switch this to fast, it's relatively quick. So if we have this up all the way, it still takes some time, but not a great deal of time for the envelope to end. So if we were to switch it to slow, it's going to last for a little while. You'll see it slowly start to fade now. So yeah, you've got a great deal of control available to you for how you want to use these. Now, of course, the easiest way to hear what an envelope is doing is to plug it into a VCA and then plug something into that VCA. So what I'm going to do is we'll just take a square wave maybe from the 555 over here, and we'll plug it into the VCA's input. And just because I know I'm going to be using this later, we'll take the output of that VCA, plug it into our WASP filter, and we'll take that WASP filter output and we'll plug it into our mixer down below here. So if we turn this up now, oops, wrong one. We'll just turn up our filter for the time being and press this. Great, we've got a sound. So straight off the bat, maybe we'll set up the Euclid grid to trigger this so that we can get some sort of pattern going. If I press clock on this, you can see that every time one of these little purple lights is triggered, it's triggering our envelope. Great. So that's already pretty self-evident in what we're going for. And just to save a little bit of time later on, I'm probably going to wind up using drums or clock from my Deluge at some point while demoing all of this. So I'm just going to quickly set up the MIDI clock divider down here, so that it's a little bit easier to get up and running with later on. So right now, it's pretty evident that we're just using this to control the volume over time of our sound. Let's say we wanted to do something else with a second envelope. Well, we could set up a different lot of triggers. Maybe we'll go to this yellow sequence down here and just change it to 1 step. Let's take the output of that yellow sequence and we'll plug it into our second envelope. Then let's take that envelope and we'll hook it up to the CV control of our filter. Now, if we turn this down a bit, you'll notice that our filter opens and closes as soon as this light is triggered. Now, that's pretty quick because our envelope is slow, so let's crank it up a bit. Awesome. We could just make this a little longer. I mean, I could have used an LFO for this to keep things easier. And let's switch it to slow mode. Great, so I think that you're getting the idea. We can use the envelope to control more things than just the VCA. Before we dive into some other use cases, let's quickly look at gate mode. So I'm actually just going to unpatch all of this for the time being and we'll start fresh. And what I might do is just use the scope on my EuroPie down here. And I'll set that up so that we can see visually what's happening as well as hear it. Cool, so I'm just going to set up a square wave into this. And we'll just increase the speed. There we go. So we can see that our square wave is running along down here, and I do hope that that is visible for all of you. If we turn down the rate of this slightly, we can play around with the pulse width control to make the top of the square wave wider or thinner. So I'm going to open this up a little bit more. And just for our sound, let's use something like La Module over here. So I'm going to plug this into the VCA. Let's control that VCA again with an envelope. And this time, let's switch the envelope to gate mode. And then we'll trigger that gate. Well, I don't need a long cable for that. We'll trigger that gate with the same LFO. Let's take that, whack it into our WASP filter again. And WASP filter into our mixer. Great, so I've got this set up now, and what I want you to listen for is if we just quickly set this to triggered mode, we can hear that our envelope is triggering and the decay is fairly short. But we can see on our scope down here that our LFO actually stays open a while longer than that decay lasts for. So now if we switch this to gate mode, you'll see that it stays open as long as our LFO is opened. So this is really useful because now we can set the decay stage and the attack stage. But we know that it's going to be open as long as our square wave is open. I hope that that demonstrates the difference between the triggered mode and the gate mode well enough. Now, something else that we might want to try here is let's take a random value. So we'll just take a noise output, plug it into a sample and hold. And then what we might want to do is take the end output of this envelope. So that means every time the envelope ends, it's going to send a trigger to this random sample and hold, sample the random noise, and give out a value. Now, sometimes you might need to play around with the decay just slightly to make this work. There we go. So we can see that there's some sort of randomness happening down there. And let's take the output of this sample and hold and plug it into table. Maybe for more audible, we'll go wave. So this is really awesome because now every time our envelope is triggered, we're getting a change happening to the module, which is just changing the wavetable to be something else. And now we can get these cool swells happening. Awesome. I mean, I really like that. Let's take the output of our wasp filter and maybe we'll plug it into a delay just for a little bit more prettiness. Cool. Let's do what we did before and we'll trigger the gate of our second LFO. Maybe with this yellow sequence again. Just gives me a good visual representation of how long everything's taking. Then we'll take the output of that envelope and let's hook it up to the CV value of our filter. Let's introduce a little bit of attack to this, just so that we're getting some sort of more randomness happening. That way it won't be so sudden. There we go. That's a really, really beautiful sound that we've just managed to get from this module. Now, something else, I guess, that we could try, just trying to sort of make this a little bit more complicated, because complicated often leads to fun results. Let's take the end output of our second one, and maybe we'll plug it into the trigger section of our to auto over here. Let's give this a twist and just do something really random. Maybe something like that, I'm not sure. And let's plug it into the CV input of our filter again. Sorry, one of my blue cables is kind of dodgy, so I'm gonna give it a little bump sometimes. That's pretty neat. We could try maybe taking that sample on hold again and plugging it into the table input of the module. It's not half bad. What I'm going to do is actually multiply that sample and hold. I'm not sure if I'll be able to clock the RBSS with this, but I'm going to give it a go. We'll see. We'll hear what it sounds like. Basically, I just want to take some random CV and plug it into the frequency. It's not going to be quite melodic, but cool. This is almost a Krell patch at this point. I mean, I have done a Krell patch on this system before, and it was set up in a very similar way. Awesome. So once more, I'm just going to unpatch all of that because we don't really need it for the next example. What I'm going to do is just take a square wave output and I'll just run this into the WASP filter. We'll go WASP filter into VCA. Once again, trigger the VCA with an envelope. And then we'll trigger that envelope with Euclid grid once more. And I'm just going to use a little yellow cable there, just because, yeah, I've done a bit of damage to one of those blue ones. Great. So we've got that little sequence running. Now what I want to do is just quickly demonstrate some things that you can do with the attack and decay CV. We'll do the same thing as before. We'll set up a sample and hold with noise. And then we're just going to trigger that sample and hold, probably with the exact same sequence over here. Great, so we can see that sample and hold is going pretty crazy. Now, the problem is that if we plug this directly into the attack or decay, it's going to open up the decay way too much or way too little, depending on what you've got set up. So what we want to do is attenuate that signal slightly. So now that we've got that plugged in, we can see that this little red light is mimicking this one, but it's just a little bit dimmer, and that's because it's not giving out as much influence. So now we can plug this into something like the decay, and we'll just have a listen to the original sequence again. Cool, so let's take that, make this a bit shorter, and increase the influence. So now we can hear that we're just getting a little bit more of a variation in our note. The same thing goes for the attack one as well. I find that taking that sample and hold and plugging it into something like the CV input on our filter, that's already pretty cool. And then let's just unplug that from our mixer, and once more we'll just run it into the delay because that sounds really neat as well. Pretty neat. if I were to quickly set up a drum patch on my deluge over here, something very basic, it syncs up really, really nicely. And we can even throw in a little bit of sidechain. And then, yeah, just throw on a little bit of reverb to the whole track. If we mix that all together with the compressor on the Zoya, sounds pretty great. Anyways, I hope that this has been really informative and given you some good insight into what you can get away with the envelopes in the AE Modular system. I also hope that you are going to enjoy these demo patches that I've got prepared for play next. So hit the like if you like, and if you don't, tell me why. Please subscribe, check me out on Patreon, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.